Sweet, Adam. Well, thank you for doing this. I appreciate you coming on the podcast. So it's been great watching your growth and success, and it happened in a very short period of time, right? We haven't really known each other for a very long time, a couple of years, mostly digital, and shook hands once or twice. But if you could catch our audience up to speed in about like 30 seconds of who you are, what you do.
Yeah, and first off, I want to thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure watching you as well, and the podcast that you and I did together on my podcast just launched today. So it's a great episode, man. I appreciate you and your support. But Adam McChesney here in St. Louis, Missouri, born and raised here. I was in medical device sales for 5 years up until the midst of the pandemic, and got into digital marketing back in 2018, kind of on the side. Turned it full time in July 2020, and it's really been a rocket ship ever since. Invest a lot in personal development and growth in coaching. But we're a 7-figure digital marketing agency. We do everything from logo and branding to website design, search engine optimization, and paid advertising. Our model's a little bit unique. We're the only agency in the space that operates in a franchise model. So we bring our clients, who are mostly contractors and service-based businesses, kind of the best of both worlds when it comes to working with digital marketing companies.
Yeah. So you, like, from what I can see from my space, you're it for that space. I'm like, well, I don't see anybody that's producing the numbers that you are, or the growth, just providing that much value and knowledge. And so I kind of look at you as like, well, if I don't think they're as good as you, then it's only second best.
Yeah, no, the marketing space is funny because everybody's marketing themselves, right? And so, I operated with the mentality that I was a 7-figure agency owner, even when I was doing $5,000-$10,000 a month. And that's kind of what that mindset you have to have in order to be successful. But now that we're here, I talk to a lot of marketing companies, all the same people that everybody sees online. And we're definitely one of the biggest, if not the biggest, of everybody that we know based on our franchise model. But even my Height Digital St. Louis, we've grown faster than every other agency I've ever talked to. And it's based on our model, right? We don't necessarily have a capacity issue. I struggled when I was running my own agency before I transferred over to Height and made that merge because of capacity. So I didn't want to sacrifice, very similar to what you talked about on my podcast, is that customer experience and quality.
Yeah.
My integrity is more than everything. So I didn't want to sacrifice that. So I could only take on 20 or 30 clients in total. We brought on 28 new clients just last month in December, which is insane.
Yeah.
And so our model is really set up for that, but it's been all in the back of my content and personal branding and relationships and networking. So it's very interesting because a lot of agencies have to spend a lot of money in paid advertising. They have very high churn, meaning clients are literally signing up and leaving because they're not happy or getting what they paid for.
Yeah.
And we've been able to scale faster, if not the fastest of anybody that I know, apples to apples in terms of our size, without having that churn issue. So we retained 91% of our clients in 2022. We retained almost 95% in 2021. And so those are all public information numbers because we're a franchise. So a lot of people fluff numbers because they don't have to actually produce it and show it anywhere. All of our stuff is public information.
Right. That's incredible, because you're right. Not a lot of people want to admit that, because, they'll fluff the numbers, like you're saying, to say like, hey, we're doing all these great things, but, on the backside of it, what are you hiding? So that's incredible. And especially to think that you're taking on per month your capacity of what you could do as a whole.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Insane.
you had brought up the statement of having a commitment bigger than just business. What does that mean for you?
Yeah, so great question. I struggle with this a lot, and I've always really never understood my purpose in life. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. I came from medical device sales where I was making $200,000 a year in my last role. I had all of the money that I would ever need, the security, the benefits, and really a lifestyle that I wasn't living anywhere near above my means, but I had it better than most people, but I worked for that, right? But I left medical device sales because at the end of the day, I wasn't fulfilled.
Yeah.
I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted freedom. And most entrepreneurs want freedom. Freedom to work when they want to, where they want to, how they want to, who they want to work with, all of those different things. And so as I've transitioned throughout my journey as an entrepreneur, I've had freedom in certain cases, but I also haven't had it. I tell myself I, run a company, but when I was doing it on my own and doing all the work, man, I was working 18-hour days. Like that, my job was like, my company was just another job.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have that freedom, even though I technically, owned a company. And so about 2 years ago, as I started making that transition over to Height, I started working with a life and mindset coach. And he said, hey, you need to declare a commitment. A commitment is that thing that literally wakes you up in the morning when you don't want to wake up, and when shit goes wrong and you're like the world is ending, that thing that gets you above on the other side.
Yeah.
And so I have transformed myself really over the past 2 years since I declared that. And it's an ever going work in progress to realize that it's not just all about business. Like I've had the money, I've had the growth in the companies, and I've also had the freedom in different times of being an entrepreneur, but there was always something missing because I didn't know why I was doing everything. I didn't know why I was trying to grow and bring in all of this revenue and hire all these team members and do all of the crap that we have to do in growing a company. But now I'm very clear on that. And so my commitment, I'd say I am the commitment to living a whole, well-rounded life. And that means in business, obviously, but also in my relationships with my wife and my friends and my family, as well as my health and fitness and my faith. So that's the cornerstone behind why I do everything. And then as we were talking, I mentioned about 6 months ago, I stopped drinking alcohol, which has been a transformative, basically removing that from my life, because that was the one thing that was truly holding me back, even though I didn't want to admit it, from reaching that next level. And that next level wasn't necessarily in business, but it was more my mindset and being happy with who I truly was.
Is that something that you felt like you struggled with, or it was just an element that wasn't that didn't hold a lot of space in your life, but it was enough space that you wanted to remove it?
I'd say a mixture of both.
Okay.
It was kind of that thing where if you've ever done the exercise where someone's like, hey, envision yourself a year from now or 5 years from now, and you're envisioning yourself with like a six-pack, white teeth, all of those different things, and you're just like truly happy. I did that exercise over and over and over again, but I couldn't see myself. Like I was like, hey, I would love a six-pack, I would love all those things, but like there was I refer to it as like a blurry vision.
Yeah.
And so when I started to consult people on it, like my business coach, my life and mindset coach, and even my wife, I was like, hey, there's this thing that I feel like is holding me back from reaching that person, from being on stage. Like I just found out 2 weeks ago, I'm gonna be not a keynote, but have a 30-minute slot on the same day at a conference with John Maxwell, with Jesse Itzler and Sarah Blakely, like some amazing people. And I don't feel like I could have gotten there had I not removed alcohol from my life. And it was more so the amount I would drink when I drank. So it wasn't like I was drinking every single night of the week, but like once the weekend came, I would drink Friday, Saturday night usually, and it would, bleed into a very lazy Sunday. And then I would, maybe still be hungover, feeling a little groggy on Monday and sometimes Tuesday. And so I wasn't showing up the best version of myself in order to reach that next level. So that was for me just as much of a mindset and a motivation thing. Like, man, dude, I never could have thought, if you and I were talking this time last year, I would have never thought I would have been able to give up alcohol. Now that I've done that, I'm like, man, there's not much I can't accomplish.
Yeah.
And so now all these things are starting to become more and more clear for me.
Yeah. Well, last time when I shook your hand, we both had a drink in our hands.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, we did.
Think about that. So now that you, well, I've done that exercise before too. Like, who do you envision yourself to be? And a lot of times for me, I have an image of what I want that person to look like. So if your
Mm,
image is blurry, I think the rest of that puzzle is, in order to achieve this image, like, there's a set of habits that person has. There's a certain routine that person has. There's all of these things that collectively add up to this image. And
mhm.
so what is it going to take to achieve that person? And I think that the habits and the mentality are majority of those puzzle pieces, and like all of those things. Like, the image is a byproduct of everything else.
100%.
you know and so, before I forget, congratulations on the speaking engagement. I actually just
Appreciate
saw
that.
last weekend, with, I don't know if you're familiar with Top Contractor School, or who
Oh
Brian
yeah.
Hess is. So
Yeah.
John Maxwell was the highlight speaker there. So Bradley and then John Maxwell was there, and dude, just an incredible anointed human being. So
Mm,
congratulations that you get to be in the same space as them. um
appreciate that.
there was a couple thoughts that went through my mind as you were saying that. Do you think that your commitment is more to yourself for others, or to others, and then you have to be the best version of yourself in order to achieve that?
So I think it starts with myself. So I have to be that commitment because that's who I have declared I need to be in order to be happy with myself.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone through my life for the majority of my life serving others first.
Yeah.
And it's not that I don't have that mentality today, but I have to be 100% content and have my cup filled before I start to pour into others.
Mm-hmm.
And I had that reverse for so long. So by me showing up and being the best version of myself, being present, sitting here talking with you, focused on our conversation. And before this, like I went to the chiropractor this morning, I worked out, I did all of those things. I
Mm-hmm.
filled my cup up first, so that way I can have a conversation with you, pour into your audience, and impact other people. So I think
Yeah.
it's a little bit of both, but it all starts with me and myself.
Yeah, that's a hard thing. I feel like when people are just realizing what that looks like, especially if you're a people pleaser or you're a very unselfish person, you're the first one on the chopping block. And so there's a very big transition period. Big doesn't always mean time,
Mm,
or a lot of time. It can just mean that you realize lots of things. I feel like some people will fall right into that and almost like at a snap of a finger, or sometimes it might take a year and a half for somebody to really fully transition that, because everything in your life changes. The
mm.
way you perceive your actions and what the purpose is in your day changes. Um, what did your friend group, or your surroundings, did that change at all during? And I'm talking like just with the element of removing alcohol, period, because a lot of times, like, that's just it's a social thing. And we tend to think that, all right, well, I have to do this in order to engage with these people. I have to be this way, or kind of meet them on their level.
Mm.
But then you're sacrificing your potential at the level that you want to be.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm kind of fortunate that I went off into my own into entrepreneurship and started investing in myself almost 3 years ago now, 2.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I started posting content and opening up about being a lot more vulnerable and where I was at in life and why I made the transition from medical device sales to try to run my own business,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was almost harder to do than quitting alcohol and facing that, because I've lost a lot of friends, meaning I'm not doing a lot of the same things that I was doing 2.5, 3 years ago, because
Yeah.
I now have different goals. I surround myself with different people like yourself, and those are more meaningful relationships to me right now. Not that the people that I used to hang out with and spend time with aren't my friends, but the circle's gotten smaller and the
Yeah.
circle goes out in different places. So I got a lot of backlash and a lot of criticism from people for one leaving corporate America and that lavish lifestyle, if you want to call it.
Yeah.
But secondarily, of like posting content, for the last 2.5 to 3 years, I've posted at least once a day, every single day on
Hmm.
Facebook, most days twice a day. And it's not like, yes, some of the stuff is glamorous and fun and all those things, but a lot of it's like motivational and determination and all of
Yeah.
those different things, which like my friend group's like, dude, what is wrong with you? Like, you think you're going to be the next Tony Robbins. I get that all of the time.
Yeah.
And so those friends aren't the ones that are liking and commenting on my stuff that actually gets me business and pushes me forward and fills
Yeah.
my cup. I'll post something random about a memory or a picture of us at somebody's wedding of my friends. And then that's when they're all going, liking, commenting, and doing all that stuff. So that mental shift for me and overcoming that was massive, because I was still at the time where I'm like, I just got married. We just bought our house, and we want to hang out with people, right? And people
Hmm.
started to kind of distance themselves, which it's a blessing and a curse. But when I decided to stop drinking alcohol, I personally, it was more so me that I have to get comfortable in those situations versus people being like, hey, I don't want to hang out with you, because I
Yeah.
had already kind of dwindled down that circle of friends at that time,
Yeah.
2 years ago. For me, it's just been trying to understand, why I did it, and getting clear with my commitment, which I've been since I declared it, and truly getting through those hard times in social situations. I decided to stop drinking, and I was in my best friend's wedding, went to Costa Rica, went to Nicaragua, had a couple other things that basically I just had alcohol everywhere I wanted to if I needed it.
Yeah.
And I was able to overcome that. And so it's just getting comfortable with those situations, and true, like if I would have stopped drinking 2 years ago, I don't know if I would have decided that I needed to do that. I don't know if I would have been able to truly overcome all the things that I've had, but I've gotten a
Mhm.
lot more clear on my purpose and my why.
Do you feel like, um, okay, I'll put it this way. I feel like people aren't comfortable with themselves. And so alcohol helps that be a little bit easier. They can engage with others, like, hey, if I don't have this catalyst to engage with others, I'm not comfortable in my own skin. Do you feel like that was a part of it for you as well?
100%. So I was not sheltered like by any means growing up, but
Hmm.
I was the oldest of four kids. And my parents were, I would say, overprotective to a degree. So like
Yeah.
I was a senior in high school, and I had my first drink when all my friends had been drinking for months, years, what have you. And so when I went off to college, I started to like get this identity. Like I was a college athlete, but I had never drank really before that. And so I started to realize like I had a little bit more confidence, right, when I would drink. And I was
Mhm.
always a somewhat quiet kid, and because of how I was raised. And so I get out into the world. My parents, 2 weeks before I end up going off to college, ended up getting divorced. So I used alcohol as a lever, and I never really looked back.
Right.
So I was an athlete. I was a pretty good student.
This is
I
just the way that
was
I am now.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
was literally like, when the school did a branding project, and I went to a very small school, like 1,500 students or less.
Hmm.
Um, I was literally the face of the school when they started to do the rebranding stuff. Like if you call into the admissions office, you literally still hear my voice if you're on hold, type of thing. Like
Yeah.
crazy, crazy stuff. And
Yeah.
so I was looked at in a different light because everybody loved me. They
Yeah.
were like, hey, Adam does all these different things, and he's a good time to hang out with, and all these different things. So I tied my identity
Hmm.
to who I also was in social
Hmm.
settings backed on alcohol.
Hmm. I think it's okay. What I think it's okay to have people kick back when you're distancing yourself. Well, when you're bettering yourself, you create distance. And I
Yeah.
personally think that when you get the kickback, that's that's confirmation that you're doing the right thing. And those people that aren't going to follow you down that path are kind of calling themselves out, like, and they almost, they don't understand what you're doing. They don't understand it. They don't get it. The only thing that they're noticing is he's trying to do something better. Well, the key term there is trying. No, you are doing something better. You're not trying, you are. And it's a really hard thing to absorb that if you're not aware that that's going to happen. I feel like you were probably are already a little bit self-aware that, hey, I'm going to get some pushback. I don't know exactly how that's going to feel. I just know it's going to happen. And then when it shows up, you're like, oh, all right, here it is. This is how it feels. But the thing is, and from my perspective, when you do that, you're not trying to gain the attention and approval of those people. For one thing, you have to be okay with yourself. So really, you're gaining the attention and approval of yourself first. You want to do something that's going to be attractive to people ahead of you, because that just means that you're going in the right direction. What they've done is obviously been successful in their life. So I'm going to kind of not try and reinvent the wheel, but understand what it takes to get what I want and to achieve this commitment. And then I do think there is value with, for lack of better terms, people that you quote unquote left behind. You know what I mean? Because let's say you've got 10 friends that you left behind or are now distancing yourself from. 9 of them are going to squawk at you because you're just being different. All 10 of them might squawk at you. 9 of them aren't going to understand, but I feel like there is a small percentage that one of them is going to look at you as an inspiration because you did what they secretly want to do, but don't have enough courage to do it.
Love that. So it's funny that you say that, because as I mentioned, I'm still in group text messages with high school friends, college friends, what have you. And, they'll randomly like share a post of mine and like make a joke of it. And no one ever is like in a group setting, like, oh, Adam, this is amazing. But then when I do see them once or twice a year, a couple people will pull me aside and be like, dude, I am proud of you. Like, that is just fucking awesome, man.
Yep.
And it's, I see it both ways, where it's like, man, I would love for you to like show that to other people, because everybody is looking at that when you guys are all just whipping shit on me. And I get it, right? Because I've been that person too, where you just start to whip shit on people and you have that mindset. But it is cool to kind of see that, and whether or not they want to admit it, right? Like, people are taking action, and becoming better versions of themselves if they actually want to do it. Most people don't want to do it, right? So you're never going to fully impact the people that you want to. Like, you can only hold so many people to a higher standard than they are currently at, right? But you can't hold them to a higher standard than they're willing to hold themselves.
Right.
And so for so long, I was wasting my time, more importantly, my energy, on people that just didn't deserve that energy from me.
Right.
And it weighs you down. And I have the same situation going on, where I have clients that have been with me now 2.5 years, that when I first started, it was just me, right? So I was doing all the work and I was their main point of contact. And now there's 4 different levels to all this stuff. I have 140 clients. Like, I just can't have a pulse on everything. And some of these people are still, Adam, I need you for this. Adam, I need you for that. And it's like,
no,
hey, like,
you don't.
You just want to talk to me, right? And so that's the other problem, that I would say more of an opportunity that has arisen, is like, I have clients that are like, hey man, I just want to run this by you in my personal life or business. And then they try to lump it into like what we're also providing them. I'm like, hey, you and I just need to be clear. If you need some questions, assistance, troubleshoot problems with your marketing stuff, and you reach out to me, like, you're going to go work with your dedicated team that I have, that's way better at doing all of this stuff than me. If you want my time to talk about business and personal, like, that's awesome, man. I appreciate you coming to me. Let's find the time to talk about that. But we got to separate those two things.
That's really hard to do, especially when somebody's paying you, because from a new business owner perspective, they, you know, and I've fallen accustomed to this, is because you're a potential customer and there might be a money exchange, which I need in order to keep my business going. You're now the most valuable thing to me, and I allow you to run my time. But as
Yes.
you grow and as you evolve as a business owner and you get, your business literally gets bigger, you realize that I can't appease everybody. And so having a vision of what you need to do, you know, which is a word that gets talked about between many different entrepreneurs, you know, realizing, okay, you got to understand what you want to do and what you want to achieve. So if you need to serve your clients the best of your abilities, you have to cut the ones that are trying to prevent that, you know what I mean? Or at least restrict them. But having, you know, what you're describing is having control of your own time and basically being able to filter out what's coming at you, you know, because you don't have any control over the inputs that come at you, you know, but you have control over the outputs of yourself. And if you can kind of deflect which ones aren't serving you, and it doesn't mean that those people are invaluable, it doesn't mean that they're you know, that there's not value there. It just means that, hey, in order for me to be the best version of myself for everybody involved, this is how it is, you know, because you don't want those people that want you to suffer because you're appeasing somebody that doesn't get it.
Mm-hmm. The other aspect of it is too, is like I have an entire team that I pay to help my clients.
Right.
And so it's like if I start stepping in, then I overstep their boundaries, and
Yep.
it deflates their confidence and deflates their authority and all those different things. But I'm also double dipping and paying. Like I'm taking myself away and I'm already paying them. But people need to realize that it's also doing a disservice to them,
Yeah.
because the moment that I step in, the reason why I had to make this pivot and grow the way I did is because I was the bottleneck in so much. Like, yes, I know if I look at something, if I look at a website, if I look at a strategy, if I look at something, I know if it's off or it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as the owner of the company, like that's what I know, right? But there's 17,000 layers that go into that. So I'm not going to be the best person to diagnose what is going on. And I'm also
Mm-hmm.
doing a disservice to you
Mm-hmm.
as the client, because my team is already working on that. So
Yeah.
you're having conversations with my team all of the time, and then I get thrown in. And it's like, all right, we're delaying the process to fixing the problem and finding a solution and moving forward,
Yeah.
all because you want to see my face or
Yep.
feel like you're heard.
Right.
And so that's been one of the biggest transitions, because everything you said is they're valuable. Every client, like I have clients that pay us a couple $100 a month. I
Mm-hmm.
have clients that pay us multiple thousands of dollars a month. They're all valuable in my mind. And I would love to give everybody the same time and attention, all those different things, but it's just not possible. My struggle and my problem has always been I do operate with that help first mentality, and I over deliver and I over serve.
Yeah.
So I have operated in my mind as, hey, I need to be a agency owner the size that I'm at today, even when I was doing $5,000 or $10,000 a month.
Right.
The problem is that as we have grown and scaled and done all of this stuff, I still operate in that small time mindset. And what I mean by that is I'm like, man, if we can't figure this out for this client, if this client's upset and they leave, like we're crushed. And that's not even like we could
Yeah.
lose 50% of our business tomorrow and still have the lights on.
Yeah.
But 2 years ago, if I lost one client, it's like, man, now we got to really figure some stuff out. So I have to kind of move that mindset and kind of
Yeah.
shift it to where we're at, but it's tough.
Yeah. Well, it's hard when you have a servant heart, for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you could kind of take that one of two ways, whether it be a servant heart. So if you can't serve somebody, you feel like you're doing them a disservice, and it's you know, I mean, you feel like you're letting them down. Or you could go the direction of scarcity versus abundance mindset. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So we're like, and I think that you know, it's up to the individual, and it might be a little bit of a combination of both. If you're operating in a scarcity mindset, and I know that you know what that means, and you have a servant heart, those things work against each other. You know?
Mm,
And it's a double negative, which doesn't put you anywhere. So
yeah.
having an abundance mindset with a servant heart, you know, that's a good place to be. And it truly comes from, you know, you want to give the person that pays you a couple $100 a month every bit of their value. Okay.
Hmm.
So, and overserve and over deliver, that doesn't mean that you, Adam McChesney, has to be the one to give that to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But your team and your company and your business and your effort towards that person can do that. And so now what ends up happening is their value isn't placed on you alone. Their value is placed on your company,
Yes.
you know,
Hmm.
because you've built into your company and the people that are underneath you, the different layers. Hey, this is how we want to serve these people, you know. So before we get too far away from it, I'm going to step back a little bit to the word commitment, you know, because we were talking about having a commitment bigger than just business, and kind of when you start a different path to grow, okay, you distance yourself from people. I like that you use the word commitment, because that also comes along with consistency. Because I feel like when you start to do that, when you start to make changes in your life, it's hard not to look at the response from people around you. Well, I'm going to try to do this and I'm going to see how other people respond. If they respond positively, then I'll keep going. If they respond negatively, then I'm just going to stay right back here. But that consistency in your commitment is what's going to make the difference. You know, it's if you decided to give up alcohol for a week, or I'm going to see how this works in the next couple social engagements, and it didn't go over too well, like, you're never going to be an example for somebody else.
Hmm.
The example that you're setting is, hey, complacency is where it's at.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh yeah.
So what would you say is your why? You know, the commitment is to have a holistic approach to everything, bigger than just business. What would you say your why is?
So my why and my purpose in life is to impact as many people as I possibly can, whether that's directly in helping them out with their marketing in their business or through my content and impacting their personal life.
Mm-hmm.
I I am so passionate about that because, and you can see it through my content, but I, again, it goes back to the commitment of being just bigger than business. I'm
Mm-hmm.
only going to work with less than 1% of all of the people that I interact with in my entire life,
Mm-hmm.
especially through my content, especially as I speak on stages, especially for anybody that's listening to this podcast. Like, I would love to work with everybody, but it's not possible.
Right.
There are people that are ideal clients of mine that are some of my biggest supporters that are just like, hey, we got a good thing going already, or someone in their family is what, there's every excuse why they don't hire me.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't affect me or stop me from continuing to show up each and every single day to provide impact
Right.
and purpose for them. So with
Right.
my content, it's been such a driving factor because, again, those people that they work for somebody else, they don't run a business, whatever the case might be, they just don't like, the services we offer. Who
Mm-hmm.
knows, right? I can still have an impact on their life by what I do, how I show up every day, and what I put out in my content.
Yeah.
That then has a trickle down effect.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about, you are never truly going to know the direct impact you have because it's impossible to trace that.
Right.
But I know each and every single day, with every post I put out, with every podcast I do, with every speaking event, that I'm making an impact.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that's like, man, I might not sell a single dollar today. We might lose money, all of those different things. But I know deep down, I fulfilled my commitment and my purpose, and that's all that matters.
How much time do you think went by before you started to see some sort of return um on your investment into yourself? So what I mean by that is, there's a certain amount of time when you decide, I'm going to start giving value outside of advertising my business, and you just kind of do it without getting any sort of feedback. You don't know if you're doing any good. You feel a little bit weird because, what's the term I'm looking for? Imposter syndrome. Like, I don't even know if I'm legitimate to start doing this. You may not have had that, but I know I did for a little bit. And I kind of had to talk myself into like, hey, I have to believe that there's more people like me out there. So if I'm going to be an encouragement in myself and I'm going to try and better myself, I have to believe that I'm not, you're significant. Yes. And there's only one of you. Yes. But I have to believe that I'm going to be able to impact somebody. And, that came from that, truthfully, that thought pattern came from something that Mike Claudio had told me, when we were in coaching together, there's somebody out there that needs you today. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so then it creates some sort of anticipation of, oh gosh, like, what am I slacking on that person? I have no idea who they are, but where am I falling short for them right now? Like, I better get over myself quickly.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, I still have imposter syndrome, right? So with every new thing that I do, or every new level that you reach, you're always going to have some sort of imposter syndrome. So I have imposter syndrome right now based on where we're at in the terms of the size of our agency, because it's new, right? So it's like, I don't have like imposter syndrome about where I was last year, and I don't have it where we were 2 years ago, but now I have it where we're at now. Now, as I'm going and starting and speaking at all of these different events, like that was new for me last year. I have imposter syndrome about the types of events I'm going to, and the authority that I have now, like because I'm doing all of that stuff. So there's always some sort of imposter syndrome as long as you're elevating yourself and rising to the occasion and being to that new level. But in terms of what I did that I think is a little bit differently than most people is I joined a mastermind literally 30 days after I went full-time into entrepreneurship. So most people,
which is early,
which is super early. Yeah. Most people will wait years before doing any sort of that because of the ego might be involved. They might feel like they have it all figured out. They might not want to level up, whatever that might be. Right. I did that 30 days after because I realized I was like, crap, I have no idea how to run a business. I don't even know what I'm doing. I went from medical device sales where I literally had one competitor. Like if you were going to buy products, it was either me or the other guy. And I was much better than the other guy and had much better products.
Yeah.
So I kind of knew I had a rhythm, right? And then I go into digital marketing and there's hundreds of thousands of options that all get digital marketing, right? So I had to separate myself. And so luckily from the early beginning, I kind of always took that help first mindset. And I would say it really took 90 days for me to truly understand the impact it was going to have. And it took about 6 months to start to see clients like coming in from that.
Yeah.
But it's a trickle down effect, right? And then you start to see like the work compound. So many of my clients that come to us are people that I've been connected with for years at this point now. So they've seen me over and over and over again. And it creates that authority, but it creates that client that is more educated. They understand what it is like to hire us because they've seen my stuff for so long.
Yeah. There's I think there's an element of when you wrestle with yourself, a little bit of selfishness, and you don't realize what it is. But I feel like it hit me one day. All right, if I feel like an imposter, then I'm thinking about myself and how I feel, right? But what is it that I'm trying to accomplish here? And I was actually in the gym at that point in time because I was having like, I don't know if I'm going to post something today, because I mean, you've I'm sure seen my stuff. One guy called me the gym selfie king, and I'm like, all right, like that's not what I want my identity to be. And so, what I want to be is an encouragement. And so I started to I was in there one day and I was just like, I'm gonna cool it for today. You know what I mean? Because of something that I was thinking, an insecurement in myself. And then my next thought was, well, why am I doing it? Well, I'm doing it to encourage others. Okay, well then who am I concerned about here? Me or somebody else? And once I took that mindset off of myself, like, all right, I don't care about what I feel. What I care about is I'm either going to continue to give value to somebody. I don't know who this person is, but I have to be confident that it's going to go to somebody, or I'm going to choose to withhold that from them because I'm uncomfortable. And so I think that imposter syndrome can come from a place of selfishness, even though we don't know that's where it's coming from, and I've told that to a couple other people just in the last week, because they're like, hey, I see what you're doing. And I kind of want to do the same thing, but I'm uncomfortable and I don't know. And this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, well, listen to what you're saying. Everything that came out of your mouth is directed towards you and how you feel. Who are you doing it for? You or somebody else? You know what I mean? So if we can remove this thought of me and think, hey, whoever's in this crowd, whoever's in this environment is really going to find value in what I have to give them, and like be able to stop and smell the roses, quote unquote, almost in an instant, and give yourself those snapshot viewpoints of where you're at and what you're doing. Because the reality is you're the one on stage. You're the one leading the business. You're the one doing all of these things, putting out value to everybody else. You're a small percent of a small percent. Like, you're already leading the charge. You know what I mean? So not that you would struggle with that or anything. That's just a thought that was going through my mind as you're saying all these, because I've struggled with the same thing too. And it's not like it doesn't still creep up, but like, hey, how can I put myself in check in an instant rather than let this go on for a while? Because it's going to creep up, and you're going to have a little bit of self-doubt right before you execute the next biggest thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. So when it creeps up, how do we get rid of it right away? It's, almost just giving yourself that outer body experience of what really is going on here and what your purpose is and why you're doing it.
Yep.
Do you think that business is the catalyst or vessel that kind of makes the value exchange happen for you?
I think yes. As much as I talk about being bigger than business and all these different things, if I was just sitting out there and promoting all this value and all this different stuff, it wouldn't go unnoticed, or it wouldn't be as impactful, right? Like, it's not that there's no impact with what I have, but you also have to have validation. So the problem with the online world is that so many people are talking, and they're not actually doing, right? So there's that coin where it's like, all right, who is fake and who is real? Now, I understand it's super difficult, even with showing business numbers, as we were talking before, to really validate what people are doing. But I know deep down that what I put out there is real, and that's all that truly matters. But for other people, they do need validation. So they need to see all this other crap that's out there, the Inc. 5000, the Best in St. Louis Marketing, the Future 50, all of these different awards that we've won. And I like to share it too, because it's also a recognition of the hard work that I've put in, but more importantly, my team too, right? So the team needs to be there. That's also representation of my clients, all of those different things. But I think in today's society, there's so many people that are fake. And so the business is the catalyst for it, because that's also what is important. Like, if someone's going to take business advice from me, because I look at myself as a serial entrepreneur, not just a digital marketer, if somebody's going to take advice from me, they need to also know that not only am I doing it, but I have experience in what they're taking advice from me from. I love, and I can't remember who exactly said it, I've heard it multiple times, is don't take advice from people that aren't in positions of where you want to be or doing things that you want to do. And so that's so key. It's like, if you're going to take advice from someone, if you were in their shoes, would you be happy? Do they represent your core values? Do you align with them? All of those things. And that, I heard that multiple times over the last couple of months. I'm like, yes, that is the key.
Well, and you can circle that back to your friend group. Like, if you're if you're having any sort of reservation of why you shouldn't elevate yourself, ask yourself, okay, so remember that you're the average of the 5 people that you hang around, or you're the average of your environment. Okay, it doesn't always have to be 5 people, but look around and say, does that person have something that I want? Do they? Yes or no? Do I want to be like these people? Can I learn from them? And you start to realize, like, No.
Mm,
You know, excuse me, if you haven't already figured this out and haven't already made a move towards something better, there's a very good chance you're going to look around and say no. If you're not, if you're able to look around and say yes, then you're in a very healthy space and good for you. But 99.9% of the people are not
yes.
like that. Why?
Mhm.
Because misery loves company. And we tend to go back where, we find a neutral position. It's hard to elevate yourself. It's hard to better yourself because you're fighting resistance,
Yep.
you know. Um, what do you think was because really you're talking about a lot of changes and growth in the last 5 month period, right?
Mhm.
What do you think was the hardest hurdle during that time for you?
Yeah, I would say truly loving myself and believing myself again.
Mm,
Right. So, you know, it wasn't that I wasn't happy with who I was before, but there was always something missing. Like
mhm,
when I would wake up, and a lot of it would be whether it was a hangover or whether it was like a transition of like just not being 100% like mentally there, right?
mhm,
Is getting back to that point where I would like look in the mirror and be like, man, dude, Adam, I love you. Like, I am so happy with the progress that you've made, because what you talked about earlier is like catching yourself when stuff goes wrong and when you lose belief,
mhm,
of like that quick reset of like, dude, you're on the right path. Like, go, like, take a quick second, understand how far you've came, and go back in that direction. I
mhm,
would say that's probably the hardest part, because I did lose some of that over the
mhm,
course of the growth of the business, so that the growth of myself, and also just, being where I'm at in life. And so
mhm.
I would say that's probably the biggest thing.
Do you have in your friendships and in your environment, do you have people that will hold you accountable to those things?
Absolutely. So I have a circle of about 5 people. So
Mhm,
that's my business coach, my life and mindset coach,
mhm,
our franchisor, one franchisee that I talk to all the time, and then my
mhm,
wife.
mhm.
Like, those are the 5 people that, not that I don't take advice or listen to or get
Yes, but
held
it's
accountable by other
very
people. It's
yes.
intentional. It's
It's
intentional.
very
So
intentional relationships. It's an intentional time. And all of those relationships are some sort of discipleship, whether and I'm sure that you're able to provide value to them. But what I'm recognizing is that your circle may have gotten smaller over time, but its impact is phenomenal.
huge, 10 times bigger than it was and 10 times smaller.
Hmm. And so man, it is really hard. It's hard when you realize that to execute on it,
Mm-hmm.
and then because what you're talking about is close relationships, personal relationships, and business relationships, which then goes back to, well, why is business a catalyst? Because it's confirmation of the fruits of your labor. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
if you're working really hard but your fruit tastes spoiled, then what you're working at doesn't actually do much good. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? But if it's good fruit and you're actually producing something, that means that what you're doing works, and so if you could give advice to somebody, like let's say give advice to you a year ago or 2 years ago, what would you say?
There's never going to be a perfect or a right time. So, especially with the new year right now, like when I thought about stopping alcohol, I was
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, I'll just do that in 2023.
Mm,
When I thought about investing in myself and actually hiring my first business coach, I did wait until 2022.
yeah.
But I used to be in that mindset of like, I'll wait and then I'll put a date on it.
Mm-hmm.
If you already are having those conversations with yourself, you've already made up your mind that something needs to change. And so the instant that that happens, you need to take action on it and do it. Or it's not that you never will, because I ended up doing some of those things,
Yeah.
but the impact that you can have by taking that change and making that change now, it compounds over 5 months. Right.
Mhm,
And so if I would have waited, who knows if I would have actually given up alcohol. But I'm
mhm,
5 months ahead of the game now by doing that. I
mhm,
think so many people have that analysis by paralysis, is that they think about it, they analyze it, they do all those things, and they're like, all right, I'll do it next year. I'll do it next month. I mean, there's already people that are like 2023 isn't going to be my year. I'm going to do it in 2024. You know what I mean? And we're
Well,
not even
that's
through
garbage.
January. Not even through
That's
January.
garbage. I mean, how long do you want to drag this out?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're doing it to yourself at that point in time. And whatever excuse that you have of why you can't. I uh I don't know. I don't know where this came from, but it hit me years ago. I was kind of general manager for an asphalt company and I just kind of fell into this role. And I started working for him and built my position out pretty much. And I just saw a need and I would serve it. So then I ended up finding myself just running the show basically. Um, and I started hearing these words from the guys. It sounded a lot like I can't.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, okay, I don't believe you for one. And I brought everybody into the shop and I said, look, I'm hearing a lot of I can't. And I'm just going to say right here and right now that it's not true. Okay. Because you can. What you're saying when you tell me that I can't, you're telling me and yourself that I won't. So I can't doesn't exist. It's a matter of I won't. I won't do this because of X, Y, and Z. You can, you're choosing not to, and like after I even listened to myself say that, I'm like, oh geez, like I need to look at that in my own life as well. But that theme carried through. And honestly, it's not always a bad thing, okay? Because sometimes you telling yourself, I won't do this because of X, Y, and Z means that you've thought about it, you've qualified it out. It might not be a good idea for you to do at that point in time. You know what I mean? But you have more control over yourself and your situations, being able to say, I won't do this because versus I can't.
Powerful.
And like it just I think that for me was extremely impactful in just how I thought about things because I took control over it. Like I was choosing to make those decisions, you know. So how easy is it for you? I'm gonna one last thing and then we'll close it off. How easy do you feel like it is for you to get off course?
I would say the definition of off course is obviously different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, off course to some people might be completely derailed. Off course might be like,
Let's
as
say
we were talking
distracted.
earlier, distracted. Got
Yep.
it. So it's not easy. Like I am very, very focused. I would say that if I, for whatever reason, like I live and die by my calendar, if I get into a week where there's just complete and utter chaos
Mm-hmm.
in my calendar, I will get derailed or I will go off course.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the biggest changes that I've made this year is blocking off more of my calendar to choose what I spend my time and energy on. I used to leave my calendar links, calendar fairly open. I used to send out my links to everybody and anybody, and I wasn't in control of my time. I didn't have that freedom. People were booking me as they wanted to, and it was going in all different sorts of directions. So I would say, in that regard,
Mm-hmm.
I have a pretty good grasp on it. It's not necessarily easy to get me off course, but when it does happen, it's usually a direct correlation to my calendar.
Okay. That's honestly, I respect people that run off of their calendar because I'm not very good at that. Like I have the idea, sure, I'd like to do this, but the implementation, it helps me not feel quite as bad if it took you some time to get there. So,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Always.
so, Adam, I know you're on a timeline and I'm going to respect that. So I very much appreciate your conversation and your time and your heart and you're willing to be vulnerable about this. I'm just going to say that I can tell that you're passionate about what you're doing because your energy comes out in your social media. Like this is not about hitting dollar signs or benchmarks. Like I can honestly say that if you don't follow Adam, like you should. His passion comes out in his social media. He's excited about what he's doing. He's encouraged by it. He likes providing value. So I want to make sure that you know that like people do see that. I see that,
Man,
and
I
it's extremely
appreciate that.
encouraging. You're very
Man,
welcome.
I appreciate that.
How can people find you on social?
Yeah. Yeah, so you can go over to my website, which is adammcchesney.com. You can learn more about our businesses, myself, and then you'll have all of my social links there. But the social platform that's the easiest to get a hold of me on is going to be Instagram, and
Mm-hmm.
my handle is Adam L. McChesney.
Okay. And then what is your ideal client? If for people that are listening to this, who is your ideal client for that you look to do business with?
Yeah, so we primarily work with service-based businesses or contractors that are doing anywhere above $500,000 a year in revenue. They have a CRM that is already in place, and they have a sales and follow-up process ready to go. So those
Mm-hmm.
are the three key things that we look for in the service-based industries like contracting of any sorts.
Mm-hmm. Would you consider yourself as somewhat of a like you can help somebody get into that space if they're doing X amount of revenue or not? You know, like if they don't have a CRM, you say, all right, let me help you get this involved, or is that not something that that you try to do?
Oh yeah, no, we actually have our own CRM that we can help people get involved with. They have to be willing to do that.
Mm-hmm.
If they're like, hey, we want to start digital marketing, but we're not interested in getting a CRM and our sales process is answering the phone and writing something down on a notepad,
Mm-hmm.
probably not going to be our best client.
Awesome. Awesome. Adam, thank you again very much. I appreciate it. And we'll see you on social and in the social world.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. We'll see you.